we had the introduction of the IMF. Now, two of the goals of the IMF is to reduce poverty and to encourage growth. But in Jamaica, when they came in 2013, we now have the severest austerity on the planet. That was in a report in 2015. You can Google and you can find it. Now, what the IMF decided that the Jamaican government should do is, one, not invest. So that's why we don't have any roads or no hospitals and bad education. Two, cut jobs and do not pay the people. Three, hoard money. Yes, the 3.4 billion sitting in the Bank of Jamaica is an IMF brilliant idea for growth. To have 3.4 billion sitting there instead of investing in roads and infrastructure and renewable energy. Now, we go back to 2017. 2017, the reserves in the Bank of Jamaica were a whopping 3.6 billion US, 3.6 billion. But in that same year, in Clarendon, two bridges washed away when it rained, May 2017, washed away. They still haven't been built. So these people in Clarendon, in this rural area now, they have to transverse, they have to cross, when the river's dry, they have to cross the river like that. When it's raining, they struggle across it. So now they're just isolated, and the government's left them. Instead of building them a bridge, no, they've kept their 3.6 billion in the reserves. In that same year, we had 33 working ambulances for the entire Jamaica, 33 working ambulances. In the diaspora, English diaspora, they took pity on us and sent us an ambulance. You know what happened to it? It sat at the wharf in Kingston for nearly a year because under the IMF agreement, they say it's a gift. We've got to pay tax on it. So when we have people dying on the roads, we had an ambulance that the government just left to stay there. Instead of using part of that 3.6 billion, no, it left the ambulance sitting there doing nothing. But you see, in that same year, they spent 2 million US was spent on the Governor General. 2 million on one man, Governor General, on wherever he lives. You know what they gave him? A car. And they put an elevator into his house. That is more important. That's more important than alleviating the plight of our brothers in Clarendon. The other thing that the IMF has done, it has told the government, and it's actually, our parliamentarians have actually signed this into law, that we use around 20% of every annual budget to repay the debt that we owe. So that's $1 billion every year that they're using. Now they said we're going to do this and it's going to run until 2026. But then because the Jamaican dollar is so weak, just keeps saying weaker and weaker, they've pushed this date out now to 2028. So Jamaican people, look around you. These roads that you don't have, you're never going to get them. 2028, they're not going to spend any money because the Jamaican dollar is now $155. Next year will be $170. So what they'll do, they'll shift this date out again. It'll be 2030, they'll say next. We can't pay back the debt. The way Jamaica is run, we cannot repay the debt because we do not earn. And one of the reasons why we do not earn is because we're not using the Creator's natural resources. We're not using solar, we're not using wind, and we're not using renewable energy. Now, of course, now we can see the consequences of what the IMF has done. As I said, sorry to be boring, we don't have any roads. We don't have any solid waste management. If you look over there, you'll probably see that it looks a bit murky. That's because invariably there'll be a lot of fires over there because that's how we dispose of our waste in Jamaica. Everybody burns it. If we had solid waste, we wouldn't be burning that. It would actually we'd be making money, we'd be making electricity with it, but the Jamaican government doesn't want that. The other thing is we dump a lot. So if you have a gully, things get dumped into the gully. when it rains, it gets washed down, and we have a gully just there, and you'll see all this detritus coming into the sea. I saw one day something that looked like a dead cow being washed out. Another day, looked like a fridge or a freezer washed out. And I'm not exaggerating. The other thing we don't have, because of the IMF, is education. Education is not good. It's crap. And the data is there to prove it. A few months ago, the JTA president said that he looked at 100 schools, and he said 80% of these schools, 80% of them, didn't have 50% of their students passing 5 subjects. Couldn't pass 5 subjects, including maths or English. So you stay in school for 11 years and you don't have a subject? And you're going to tell me, because somebody at the Ministry of Education was angry with me when I said that education is rubbish. She's angry. I also said it's underfunded. She's angry. You only have to look at our schools to know that they're underfunded. And what upsets me about education, and this is a woman I'm talking about, is that these people and the parliamentarians seem to forget about how hard it was for girls at school. Because I never realised this. Because the school that I was at, there's never any water there. So, God, what do teenage girls do during the, what do they do? What do they do? But we have female parliamentarians who don't care. It's shameful. They're a disgrace. They really are. So I'm going to say this to parents. I have to read this. The Education Act says this. Education Act Section 44, it states this. The wishes of parents to be considered in education of students. That means, parents, that you can go and demand that the government put solar panels into schools, so that way money will not go to JPS, it will stay in education, and when you have your girls you can have water in the schools and they can be looked after properly. So parents, you need to do something about that. Other things that we don't have, I'll run through them quickly. Markets, you go to a market, they're worse than pigsties. All of this is to do with the IMF. Our healthcare system. Early in the year, a 20-odd-year-old girl got burnt. 80% burnt she got. And that's fine. Did you hear about her? The girl who got burnt? No. She got burnt. And I needed $770,000 for her to go to America. They didn't give her the money. She died. She lived loaded to die. 14 days or something like that she stayed in Jamaica. Parliamentarians could just find the money because they got that 3.4 billion I keep on making noise about. They couldn't take out 770,000 for one of our citizens. These are the people we're dealing with here. These ain't no normal people. These ain't people. They need to be ousted. They need to be put on trial for treason. I'm not joking, they need to put on trial for treason because what they're doing is treasonous. We have an opportunity to have a prosperous country and we don't have it because they sided with the IMF to make sure that we stay poor. We should have solar powered factories, but what do? These fuckers, sorry, pardon the French, you know what they build? They build fucking BPO offices. BPO, they pay $2 a bleeding hour. That don't help us. Solar power factories would help us. Because it would bring down the Jamaican dollar and we'd have food security and we'd have these ladies who are sitting at the side of the street. They could be in these factories working. But we have BPO. That's what the government thinks is a good idea. But the worst thing about it is that us taxpayers, we're building these buildings. Not the BPO factories aren't building them. BPO people, we Jamaican people are building them. And then they get all kinds of blighs and subsidies. So I don't even know if they pay any bloody tax. That's how our country is run. It's treason. They talk about, Ed Bartlett talks about tourism. Tourism ain't good for Jamaica. Again, minimum wage jobs, all owned by foreigners who take the profits and take it back to Spain. Don't get spent here. It's treason.
Well, let me hear you say